Thanks for joining us this week. Today we're talking about tariffs in your retirement, so let's get into it.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth and Tax Advisors. Live your 2-comma life.
So like we said, I don't think anybody has anything but tariffs on their mind right now.
Well, yeah. And so I guess when we're recording this, we're probably a couple weeks out before it launches. So hopefully by the time this launches, everybody's like sick of hearing about it.
Yeah. Hopefully, I hope we are sick of hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And which really is kind of where I think we should be. It's funny how when I look at where we're at today, though, there's a lot of talk around all of this. And there's a lot of just frenzy. And it really is, in my opinion, 90+% of it is media spin, media whipping things up. As we're sitting here today, and recording, I don't know what today's date is, the 9th or 10th or something of April. The market is down peak to trough. We look at the S&P 500 is down 20-ish%. We haven't even officially cracked like bear market territory.
Okay.
If you put the volatility that we've seen in the last few weeks, it's been pretty volatile. But I mean, that's not super uncommon. It's not like, oh my gosh, we've never seen this before. I
was going to say, relate it to something another time in history that we really would know. You can't even relate it to another time in history because it's that common. Okay. I mean, literally the volatility we've seen is nothing that should be like newsworthy. I mean, it is just because the news will make anything newsworthy, but really it is nothing that is crazy. And what's so funny to me is, as we're having this conversation about tariffs, everybody's saying tariff. That is a huge conversation piece and something that we should take into consideration. But what nobody's talking about is the markets were high. If you look at the U.S. market, it was expensive at the end of last year. We started making changes to portfolios because the U.S. market was high back in September, October of last year. So some of this correction we needed to have. We had a market that was overpriced at that time. And so, yes, this is kind of the impetus or the catalyst to doing that. But by no stretch is this something that's going to be, our opinion, like devastating and everybody should go back to work and, all that kind of stuff. This is just in terms of retirement and your investments.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, if you were, when you retired, for our clients, with all of our clients, we stress test the portfolio. We stress test, what if scenarios, and people come back and say, well, we never expected tariffs. No, we expected 20% downturns. Right. We expected the market to be volatile, whatever the reason was for it. We expected that. And
whatever the marketing name is at the time.
Yeah. At the time. Fill in the blank. Right. And so like, it's so funny that I understand being nervous. I understand like this does seem different. My opinion, I am not the expert when it comes to macroeconomic like effects and things. But my opinion is what's even more damaging to our economy, what's more likely to cause inflation, what's more likely to cause people or companies to not make as much money, all of that kind of stuff, is all of the minimum wage increase requirements that took place the last couple of years, more so than the tariffs that are coming in. And, but yet that's something
in a negative way.
In a negative way. So here's what happened. Let's talk that through a little bit. So let's say that, minimum wage before the increases took place, minimum wage put you in the bottom 20% of work. I don't know what the number is, but let's say it's the bottom 20%. And that minimum wage allowed you to buy X number of things. Initially, when your wage goes up, prices have not increased at all at that point. So you see this bump like you're making more money in your lifestyle. But what happens to every business when they have to pay people more? The price of their goods goes up.
They have to cover it somehow.
They have to, right? And so what happens is it forces the price of those goods to go up. That forces inflation. And what happens is everybody says, yeah, but that we're really helping the middle or the lower end of that spectrum. We're helping people on minimum wage. But not really, because what happens is if you were somebody who was working for above minimum wage and your job required that you, or stipulated that was what was appropriate for you to make, was something above minimum wage. Are you going to be happy now that minimum wage came up, but yet you have all these extra responsibilities, the manager of the place versus the worker of the place? No, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So guess what happens to that person?
They get an increase.
Has to go up. And then the person that's managing them says, well, why are they making that much? Why aren't I? And so it's this ripple effect where wages then go up for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So now we're back where we were.
We're back to where we started. And it's even worse. If anything, it starts to create a gap that widens, because if you do that, and let's say inflation is going up by 5%, and some of that, let's say, is driven by these wage increases. What happens then is when it comes time for reviews next year or salary conversations, everybody's talking about, well, inflation is at 5%. I need a cost of living increase to do this. Well, 5% on $100,000 is a heck of a lot more money than 5% on $35,000. And so all of a sudden you just created in dollar amounts a bigger spread from the people making a lot of money versus people not making as much. And so when we look at that, but all of that kind of, and my reason for bringing that up, the media didn't spin that as being inflationary. They didn't spin that as being something that was going to hurt business and your investments. It was spun as something that was good for workers. But in the end, what you can net buy really doesn't change a whole lot, because it's got this ripple effect that companies are just going to say, well, if my labor costs go up, then my product has to go up. And we saw that. We saw inflation over the last couple of years. So if we go back to then the tariff conversation, this is just the next fill in the blank. What's taking place. And if your portfolio wasn't stress tested or wasn't diversified enough, then you need to make the changes. If you went in with a financial advisor who stress tested the portfolio, knew you could weather the storm, and structured your portfolio appropriately, this is just another, like I said, kind of fill in the blank kind of.
So if you were planning to retire this year, let's say everything you just said happened, stress test, normal hiccup, and you were planning to retire this year, is that like, should this be a factor in your consideration, or it should just be business as usual, stay the course and follow your plan?
It depends on how secure you are in that number. Like when you ran that and you stress tested it and it said, 80% of the times you can survive the rest of your life and have plenty of money, then this is just a hiccup. Don't let it derail your plans. If you're pushing it, you're like, I don't know if I can, should I? Then wait a year.
Just wait a year
and just see what,
and then
retest
and reevaluate.
Yeah. And when you think about tariffs, it's important to kind of think, I think too, to peel back, what's taking place and why is it taking place? And, first, I mean, whether you're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, this is something that he has telegraphed since his first presidency. It's been on his radar. Actually, it's funny. I was just reading an article and it quoted him back in the 80s talking about how the trade imbalance between the U.S. and our trading partners was something that needed to be fixed. So this isn't even a last, 8 to 10 years type of deal. This is a decades long thing he's been talking about. So we shouldn't be surprised at it. I think the way in which we're going about it might be disruptive. I don't know what his ultimate outcome is any more than anybody else does. I think that there's some negotiating that's going to probably happen. But when you think about what the end result is, conceptually, the idea is, how do we make it more beneficial, more competitive for the U.S. to manufacture goods versus having to buy all of our goods from around the world? And I don't know of any American that would say, I don't want more American jobs.
Right.
I don't know of any American that would say, no.
I want to buy everything in China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so while there may be some things we have to go through to get there, and I don't know that we're going to get there. I'm not saying like, hey, rubber stamp of approval on this thing. But when you think about it, just if you take a step back, raise up above the forest and get out of the noise that's taking place, what I believe will happen is we're going to see some negotiating take place. There will be some higher costs or higher tariffs that are happening, but I think there's going to be equilibrium as well. People get to a point where they'll say, I don't want to buy it at that price.
Right.
Well, if they're not going to buy it at that price, something's going to have to give, and eventually prices will come back down. That's not fun right now.
Right.
But I think that's part of the journey.
So let's take a step back. And so I feel like what's really on people's mind is maybe not so much tariffs in retirement, but tariffs just in daily, everyday life.
Yep.
So if you don't want to talk about that, we don't have to. But so I feel very confused about, even what the word tariff actually means. Yes, I understand what it means, but like not really.
Yeah.
And when you hear, okay, there's 115% increase in tariffs from products from China, let's just say, I assume that means my price is going up 115%, but I don't know if that's actually accurate. It doesn't feel right, but I don't understand that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of go through that a little bit. And this is like a super convoluted process. Like this is not straightforward. So what happens is it's not just so back up one step. What a tariff is it is in essence a tax for bringing something into the country from somewhere else. And it's not like your sales tax when you go to the store. It somewhat is, but it's more specific than that. So when you go to the store and let's say your sales tax is 10%, whatever you're ringing out, you're paying 10% tax on that, with the exception of certain items. Things like liquor. Liquor is going to have an added liquor tax. Cigarettes, an added cigarette tax. Gasoline has an added gas tax. So you can kind of think about a tariff similar to that. So what happens is when you bring goods in, there's a cost to bring those goods in. The federal government then can add to that a tariff, or that, which is what we're talking about now, an added cost to certain items from certain countries. So what happens is, let's say that I'm going to buy a car from that was manufactured in Germany. Well, there's a bill of lading that's filled out that goes to the bill of lading is just, here's what's in my container. So this is what I'm bringing in from Germany. Here is what's in my container. That goes to the port authority or however that is coming
Received.
into the U.S. They then go through that container and make sure that what is on the container is actually what's on here. Then they have to look and see what are all of the components of that item, where did they originate, and apply a tariff. So that car that's coming in could have steel that came from China.
Sure.
Well, the manufacturer or the importer actually is responsible for telling the port authority that car has 40% steel worth this much money that came from China. That tariff then gets assessed on that portion of the vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
That goes to China.
Okay.
This semiconductor for the sensors came from Taiwan. And this is how many of those we have. Here's what the cost is. Therefore, there's the tariff that's assigned to that. There are brokers or tariff like police, not police, wrong choice words, facilitators. So there are companies that if I'm importing something, I can hire them and they'll make sure that that's taken care of. And then I have either 15 or 30 days to pay the bill on the item that's coming in. It's pretty convoluted.
Yeah.
The part right now that I think we do have to worry about, and the part that nobody's really talking about, is when you're in business, you can be making a lot of money. You could be extremely profitable. However, if you run out of cash, you're out of business. And so people say, well, how could you be profitable and run out of cash? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Well, so let's say that, and I'll land the plane here, I promise. but let's say that you're in the business of, building a car, and that's your business. And when you sell that car, you are going to make a lot of money. However, before you can sell that car,
you got to buy all the stuff.
Yeah. You have to pay all of the people, and then you have to market it, and so you could start spending money today, and not sell that car for 6 months.
Right.
And if you don't have enough cash to make it that 6 months, you're out of business, even though you're going to sell a profitable vehicle. And what happens is, so as a company grows, they get into this cycle where they're putting more and more cash out with the idea that I'm going to sell it and make money eventually. So the place where I believe we have to have some concern around all of this is around these companies, because who's responsible for paying the tariff is the company that's importing the good. And so we have companies here that have to pay these increased tariff prices that may or may not have the cash on hand that we're expecting this increased tariff price.
Okay.
Now, at some point, they will sell that vehicle or they will sell that good and they will reap then the money back. But if they don't have the cash to to cover that time period,
doesn't matter.
And so what can compound that is if consumers start saying, we're cutting back on what we're spending because we're nervous because of the way this was implemented. And I'm nervous about everything and everything's getting spinned up. And I'm like, I'm going to hold on to my money. Now, all of a sudden, these companies are out the cash that they weren't counting on, and they're not turning over their inventory as quickly as they were expecting. That, to me, is in the short term, is the real issue that we have to have our eye on and see how are we going to help those companies facilitate that, because those are American companies that are going to get potentially hurt in that deal. Now, what we're seeing is companies kind of scrambling a little bit, looking to say, how do I solve for this? And what happened was, it's funny. So we saw this a number of years ago when tariffs came in during Trump's first presidency. We saw a lot of manufacturing leave places like China and go to places like Vietnam and other Asian countries. But because what happened was the tariffs in China made it not profitable to make money, or not as profitable to make their goods there. So when they moved to Vietnam and they didn't have these tariffs, all of a sudden now they could continue making money on the prices they were selling. So theoretically, that's the track that we're following.
Right.
We're saying, okay, if we make it more expensive to do business in these places, then people will look for, how do I fix that? And we will see this migration to away from those places, which really, I believe, there's a big conversation right now around the Canada, Mexico, their trading partners and all that kind of stuff. But what we could see in my kind of thought process is we could see many of those goods that are being manufactured in the Far East moving like to places like Mexico, where tariffs are lower, but because the tariffs are lower, their wages are higher in Mexico than they are in.
Sure.
But now all of a sudden it becomes more economical to make those things on our continent, which ultimately, there's a play here that talks a little bit about our national security as well, around, what happened during COVID and how did we have all of these things sitting at the port that you couldn't get and they couldn't come up. I mean, like, it was insane. And so there's some piece of this that's national security as well. Which I feel like this is a pretty heavy topic. I've done a lot of talking.
It is. I mean, it's so interesting though, because I feel like you kind of touched on it earlier. It depends on kind of where your, what news outlets or what social media accounts you follow, what your feelings are, what you have been perceived as what's happening. Like, I feel very confused because I have like several different people or sources kind of bringing you the information. And it's like, it depends on who you're looking at and what you think is happening.
Yep.
And so I think kind of going back to what you were just saying, like, what is their theoretical goal of this? Because my understanding is that manufacturing would be brought back to the United States is what the goal is.
I think I think there are lots of goals with this, and this is the hammer that they can try to use to accomplish those goals. So one of those goals is, can we repatriate some of the manufacturing that was lost? And can America compete then on a global scale with some of those things? So that's part of it. A second part of it is absolutely, I believe, national security. Because if you look at the tariff conversation as part of the broader conversation, That's where the Panama Canal saying, hey, we need to retake over the Panama Canal. China's been controlling it. That's a national security issue. Like, we need to be able to get through there, if you will. But I think also it's a drug conversation, because part of this is which is a repeat from his first presidency. Trump was pushing cutting down on fentanyl coming into our borders, right, and really saying, it's not only an us problem. We don't have to police it when it's here. You guys have to do a better job of making sure it doesn't leave your borders and comes to our borders. And one of the ways that I can apply pressure to that is by increasing these tariffs, because you're not going to want to see your economy suffer, and you're going to do something about this fentanyl that's coming in. So, and then there's the additional conversation around, are other countries not just paying their fair share kind of deal, but are they living up to their end of the bargain? So what I mean by that, post World War II, the United States has been the policeman of the world. When you look at shipping routes are safe because the United States Navy keeps them safe. Why are we the only one paying that bill?
Right.
And so, and what we've seen is, we saw the same thing in Ukraine. Ukraine was going down a path where we were helping Ukraine. We were helping them more than everybody else. Why were we helping them more than their neighbors? The minute that we said we're not going to help Ukraine the way that we were, military investment in all of the European bloc increased dramatically. Germany was spending $0 on military. Now all of a sudden, it's a huge investment that they're making into their military. And so it's kind of like, it's one of those things where my picture is, I don't gain 10 pounds because I ate that donut this morning. I gained 10 pounds because I started by eating a donut in the morning. And then that got me comfortable enough. Oh, though that wasn't so bad. And then I have 2 donuts in the morning, or then I have a not healthy lunch. And all of a sudden I'm 10 years later, 10 or 20 pounds heavier and out of shape. Well, for me to get back into shape, I don't just have to cut out the donut. Yeah. I have to go through all of these things, and it's a pretty big deal, and it stinks for however long it takes, but I have to do that. And I kind of feel like that's where we're at with a lot of the things that are taking place. There are things that have gotten out of whack, and you can go back and look at it. Really all started post World War II, which that's a long time ago. Yeah. 80 years ago. Right. And so when you start looking at that stuff, it's like, okay, now I can start to see where this starts to line up. And that's why I really think, I mean, it's going to be painful, I believe that we're going to see volatility. I think that anytime you disrupt something, there's some sort of pain that goes along with it. But I think that at the end of the day, I can see a path to healthier relationships around the world, United States included.
Okay. So we went down a lot of different paths.
Don't we always?
I know. So
can we do something fun for a second? Like, how is this going to affect Katie getting her nails done?
Exactly. That's what I'm ultimately getting at, is like, can I still buy my sweet treats? Yes. Or like, my budget remains the same. Yes, it does. Am I going to get the same amount of donuts, or am I going to get less?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think that all of that is yet to be known. It's funny. There's some things out there now where they're starting to calculate what they think the increased tariffs are going to raise prices to. And like, they're talking about the price of a car. Like, I think a Toyota, they estimate might go up by like $7,000 because of the tariffs. So to your question earlier, when you say, hey, I see this 110% tariff, like, what does that mean? Well, the price of that Toyota might go up $7,000, not go from being a $45,000 car to a $90,000 car. But it is significant.
So how does that, I mean, without like really getting, super how's the sausage made, but like, if it is 115% increase in tariff, because it's like, who eats that cost then? Or like,
so the way that it's structured right now, ultimately the U.S. company that is importing it is the one that's going to have to eat it in the beginning, because they're the ones that are buying it from overseas. But what ultimately will happen is, if I'm buying that product from overseas and I have to add that added cost onto it, I am going to go back to them and either negotiate a lower price or I'm going to find a different provider.
So it's basically up to the company to decide how much do I think our consumers are willing to pay extra? Like how much can I possibly add on to get this cost covered?
Yeah. And what will probably happen is it probably is a combination of a lot of things. It probably is a renegotiation with current suppliers and the current supplier is going to make less money. It's probably a concession based on the ultimate manufacturer here, the seller here, who's going to make a little less money, and the consumer is probably going to pay more. Is probably what ultimately happens with that. When I say ultimately, that's like the middle step. Initially, I think we just see companies kind of eating it, trying to figure it out. Then we go to this middle ground where kind of everybody's giving some and they're trying to find equilibrium. But eventually, it will reset the table, and either companies will make decisions to either move or remanufacture somewhere else, those kinds of things.
So they have to also be companies have to kind of be making out okay at the beginning also, because I imagine like there's already cars that have been here for months, years, but they're still adding that new tariff.
Yes. Well, and,
right. Like,
and what happened was just so today is the first day of these tariffs actually taking effect. It happened at 12:01 a.m. last night. And it was anything that was not already shipped by 12:01 a.m. that got the tariff.
Okay.
So up until, 8 hours ago or whatever, 9 hours ago, none of these increased prices have hit. And they won't hit until it comes to
receipt. Yeah. So it's another 2 weeks potentially.
Yeah. And so we're not like there. And that's why I think you saw over the last couple of days, a lot of other countries reaching out to the U.S. and saying, hey, how can we negotiate this? How can we get this to change? Like, what are you really looking for? Kind of your question earlier, like, what is the end game? I think they're looking at that. So we have time. That's not a lot of time, but we have some time to where like they could strike a deal, work it out. And that never happens because
kind of how TikTok was gone for, was gone for like
a day,
5 seconds.
Yeah.
And magically, once it disappears for 5 seconds, they suddenly figured out how to get it back.
Yes. Yeah, there's lots of those things, right? And so, and the one area that I'm a very pro free market economy. And so my opinion is that we should have globally zero cost to do business, like just free trade globally. And let the market work.
Decide,
Let the market decide. If I decide that I don't want to buy stuff from China, then I don't.
Yeah.
And I buy something, even if I pay more for it, that might be my choice. And so that's the one area that like I would prefer less government
regulation,
less regulation. Let it be a free market. On the flip side, you can't operate in that. If nobody else is.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's like, how do we use the rules of the game to try to attack this? Long term though, we'll work through this. One of the questions I like to ask people and, is today, I keep saying the 9th, is today the 10th?
I don't have no idea.
I don't either. Okay.
Saturday's the 12th.
Okay. Well,
so what does that mean?
All right. So today we're the 9th.
Okay.
So today it's April 9th, 2025. What happened on April 9th of 2005?
Zero idea.
No clue.
Yeah.
And we're going to have the exact same conversation in 20 years. And we'll say, what happened April 9th of 2025? And we'll say, I don't know what it was. This tariff thing's going to be a distant memory.
Yeah. And I also often think like as much as COVID was like, I don't even want to like talk about that time. It's also like, it taught us so much. How much did we immediately pivot?
Yes.
Immediately. You can't go to a business that doesn't offer pickup orders, like would you home delivery,
things.
So, yeah. And I mean, grocery stores figured it out in like 3 days because they had to.
You have to.
So
yeah, necessity is the mother of all invention, right?
Exactly.
It will get figured out.
So it's not.
So to that point, that's how Honda Motor Company got started. It was during World War II when they couldn't get gasoline. And so Honda was a gentleman, came up with a way that they could use plant material as gasoline and they put it into motorcycles and that's Honda Motor Company today because they didn't have those.
Are you talking about the company that makes my minivan? My new minivan?
Did you get a new minivan?
Yes.
Oh my word.
This tariff thing kind of pushed it a little bit, saying we don't know what's going to happen. We know we need one.
Let's do it.
Let's just do it.
Oh, that's funny. After like 3 episodes ago, we said no minivans ever.
Oh, no. Hey, I've been saying that, but I also recognize I'm not excited about it, but.
Oh, my word.
Necessity is the
mother of all invention. You have turned.
I'm not excited about it.
It is so funny. So does that have anything to do with like what I keep calling the twin skis?
The twin skis. Yeah. The twin skis really pushed a few things in our direction. Without us choosing them necessarily.
Yeah, totally get it. Well, and unfortunately, that's going to be the next rest of their lives.
Forever.
Right? Because it will.
For all of our whole family.
Your whole family.
Is going to.
Yep. Yeah. So when I think about how all of this kind of lands, what I encourage people to do is first of all, just take a breath. This is not like God led the Israelites through the Red Sea. He protected Job after Job went through all of the things that Job went through. You can go through the list of what have we been through as a people, as a society, and we're still here and we're living today.
And how many generations thought they were living through the plagues?
Exactly.
I think every generation probably thought,
absolutely,
this has got to be it. These are the plagues. God is sending the plagues.
It is. And like, we're here, we are living today way better than we have ever before in history. What happens is when the market goes well, people tend to forget that it's a volatile place. Mm-hmm. And we've had a couple years of good market performance. So now we see a little volatility. We throw in a headline and people start getting nervous. This too will pass, and we'll be sitting here 20 years from today saying, what
still
happened?
Eating eggs.
Yeah, that's right. Still having toilet paper. Yeah. Unless they come up with something totally new. Who knows what AI will do? That'll be outstanding. Yeah. But all of those things, like we're going to be okay. And so from our perspective, we have made adjustments to portfolios. But we started those adjustments back in the fall already. We continue to today, right before we recorded, we had an investment committee meeting, and actually are using this as an opportunity, to reallocate some portfolios and, do some tax loss harvesting stuff. So these, in every situation, there's an opportunity. There are opportunities here today. But it's nothing to say, I gotta drastically change my life. If you're worried though, if you have questions, if you don't feel like your advisor is doing what they need to do, give us a call. Like, that's what we're here for. That's the business that we're in. So
you can panic dial.
You can.
You
Now, I don't always panic answer.
Yeah. You can panic call and talk to Rachel.
What's so hilarious though with that is, I can tell you exactly what your political leanings are.
Yeah. Based on when you call.
When I get panic. Yeah. I know. I don't even have to go there.
Or you have clients that you already know them in that way.
Yes.
And then anticipate they're going to call today.
Maybe we should give Joe a call.
We should just call him.
Which is so funny.
It's so sweet.
It is. Yeah. Well, and it's the funny thing to me is, like, because of the business run, we get to see a lot of different perspectives from people, which I think is part of the reason why it's easier for us to take a bigger picture look and be able to step back, raise up above the noise, because we have just as many people panicked when they thought that Harris was going to win as we had people panicked when Trump did. Mm-hmm. And we have just as many people that are saying, yeah, we're doing all the right things and we should be, we're America. We should be laying down the law, as we have people that are rubbing their hands, worried about what's it going to mean and what's it going to do.
Yeah.
And all of those people have the same thing in mind. everybody wants what they think is best for our country, what they think is best for their own personal situation, what's best for their family. But we just have different ways of looking and approaching it.
Anytime I find myself in that situation, wringing my hands, I always find solace in that. There is somebody who thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah. Somebody who thinks this is awesome.
But for real, okay. So it's not just that 99% of the population is looking at 1% saying, you guys are nuts, but that 1% just happens to be in power. Yeah. It does make me find some solace of okay, and I don't know everything.
Yes.
My opinion does not rise above anybody else's opinion. Yeah. There are, so.
And the people that have those thoughts are really smart people.
Right.
On both sides of the argument. They're really smart people. So this is not it has to be. It has
to be this. How could,
so while even when things do make you nervous, when things look like they're on whatever side of that argument you are, this too will pass, right? And that's where we're at today. Be smart about it. Make changes as appropriate. Talk with your advisor. See if there's things that you should be doing to your portfolio. To your point, Katie, if I was thinking I was going to buy a car, I probably, if I'm not buying one that's on the lot now that hasn't had a price go up, I'm not going to buy it when the tariffs are in place, because who knows if they're going to stay there. So I'm going to put that off and see if I can postpone it. Or, if I was thinking about building a house right now, I probably pump the brakes for a little bit before I sign up to do it and commit, not knowing what lumber prices coming out of Canada are going to look like. But that doesn't mean I never built the house. That doesn't mean I scratch that from the list or I don't retire. It just means I have to use some intentionality and some thoughtfulness as I make those decisions. So.
Okay. Well, you just got back from a road trip with your girl.
Yep. Me and my youngest, Gracie. It was outstanding.
It was a little eat, pray, love Tim and Grace trip.
It was outstanding. Yep. We did DC. We did NYC. We went to DC. Actually, you talked about COVID earlier. Me and Maddie and Tim had done COVID as a class trip when they were in 8th grade. I chaperoned with it.
You did DC as
We did DC. Yeah. And Grace, when she was in 8th grade, she was a COVID kid.
Okay.
And so she didn't get to do the DC trip.
Okay.
And of all the kids, Timmy and Grace are the two that probably would get the most out of it. And so Sarah suggested DC, but Grace, since the time she was little, 2, has loved New York City. To the point where if you look at half of the pictures of Grace when she's little, she's doing a Statue of Liberty pose. And so wherever she was. And so and Grace is the type, she loves to road trip. And so she said instead of fly, she wanted a road trip. Fun. So when I was looking at it and planning it, I was like, you know what? We could probably
tack on
little NYC and do that too.
So was this her first time in New York?
My first time in New York. I had never been
both
either.
of yours. Okay, cool. Did it live up to what she?
Oh yeah. Well, it helps. We had a hotel that was on Times Square. We ended up with a balcony that overlooked Times Square.
Cool.
That we could sit out at night and watch all the neon building
honking
lights and all that stuff. Which, if you're familiar at all, Times Square is close enough that we walked to a Broadway show. We walked and did Central Park. We did, so all of the things you're supposed to do. And of course, then we hopped in an Uber and went and did Statue of Liberty and 9/11.
9/11, yeah.
So yeah. Aww. And actually, the cool thing about that trip, and maybe we should do one on road trips, because I could talk for hours on road trips. But one of the cool things is on the way out of the corner of my eye, I see this little sign that says the Flight 93 Memorial next exit. And so Grace and I, it wasn't on my list. I didn't even think about it. But then we get off, and that took us on probably, it was not far. It was 20 miles off the road or off our path. But then not only did we see Flight 93, but then it gave us probably 80 or 90 miles of non-expressway driving. But we saw Flight 93, the Pentagon, and the World Trade Center memorials.
Cool.
So it was just all really cool.
Awesome.
Really good trip.
Did you have bagels?
We did.
And did you have a New York slice of pizza?
We did. So we're driving in, and I'm like, it's going to be late when we get to the hotel. So we actually called ahead and had a pizza delivered.
Oh,
so
nice.
It was sitting at the front desk for us when we got there. So
best.
Our first New York dinner was a little New York slice of pie. So Yeah.
Awesome.
And you just had Dylan's birthday party.
Yeah, I just turned 3. Well, in a couple of days, he'll officially turn 3. So we put him to bed after his party and he said, Mom, that was so fun. Can we do it tomorrow?
Well, so you got friends and cousins. and the dude could not like opening presents anymore.
I know. So sweet.
Yeah.
Christmas, he was like very excited, but this was his like first real, he knows what a birthday party is.
Yep.
He told me, we didn't tell him ahead of time that it was his birthday party because no concept of time. So we're like, let's not hype this up for a week. So the morning of his party, I said, today's your birthday party. He said, it's my turn.
Oh, that's awesome.
I said, awesome. Yes, it is.
Yeah, Dill, it's your turn, buddy.
So we had a great time.
Awesome. Well,
and this weekend is Gracie Girls Senior Prom.
Well,
our last prom.
I have to share that. She'll be happy that I share this with everybody. I did embarrass her once.
Once?
Intentionally once, I guess. Which was so funny, by the way. I have a picture of her. We're sitting on a bench, and she's holding her phone like this, and she's like, because she's telling me that I'm taking our selfies wrong. I'm like, we are a nationwide commercial or like a progressive commercial. I'm like,
expired.
Like we are a progressive commercial. But no, we had a private tour at the Capitol. Luckily, we had just had a tour and we got an email from the senator saying, hey, we're going to upgrade you to have one of our interns walk you around.
Oh, cute.
And so we have this intern who was a junior up at University of Michigan. And my kids will tell you, Sarah will tell you, I'm a question asker. So like I don't know what my record is, but I could probably ask 100 questions in a row. I'm a curious person. Well, one of those questions I asked this young man was, as he's telling me he's been in DC.
Geez.
Like, so have you, do you have a girlfriend back home, like you're missing or whatever? No, but I wish I did. And so
oh my gosh, no.
So I'm like, well, she just got asked to prom, so it can't be her. I'm like, Grace and him both for about 3 minutes, like,
oh my gosh.
Dad, why did you do that?
Well, if you're interested in this? I have a girl version.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, well, I did that for you, right?
Worked out great for both me and Grace.
You and Grace, yeah.
All right, wrap this up.
Wrap it up. So.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For more resources that might actually be helpful, head to pv-wp.com. Be well.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth and Tax Advisors. Live your 2-comma life. Learn more at pv-wp.com. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Retirement Readiness Podcast on your preferred podcast platform.